The teacup was still warm when Eleanor Ellie Warren vanished from the quiet neighborhood in Corvallis, Oregon, population 55,000. The October morning draped a thin layer of mist over rooftops and concrete walkways, with a chill spreading across the wooded area near the Willamette River. At 8 a.m., Ellie's neighbor, Marlene Huff, waved through her kitchen window as the 58-year-old woman carried a blue ceramic mug across the small yard. Separating their modest homes, Ellie was checking her beloved flower pots, the mug with silver wave patterns that she had used for over 15 years. The elderly woman watched Ellie's figure return inside, her dark green sweater the last splash of color in the pale mist. What happened in the next 30 minutes would haunt Corvallis for more than a decade. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. The morning of October 11, 2011, in Corvallis, Oregon, began with a thin layer of mist still clinging to the eaves of old wooden houses, the characteristic early autumn chill enveloping the quiet residential area near SW 3rd Street. The sky was pale gray, weak light filtering through damp tree canopies, and the occasional sound of vehicles rolling over the still wet road created the slow rhythm of a peaceful morning. Eleanor Ellie Warren, 58 years old, typically started her day around 7, opening the window for some cool air and brewing a hot cup of tea before tending to the small tasks in the one-bedroom apartment where she had lived for over 10 years. Despite her health gradually declining in recent years, Ellie still maintained her familiar routines, watering the plants on the windowsill, checking the mailbox on the porch, and standing for a few minutes by the old wooden railing to watch the neighborhood wake up. Many around her were so accustomed to that sight that most could predict when Ellie would appear in the yard, a gentle repetition, almost part of the shared rhythm of life. Around 8 that morning, a neighbor passing by remembered seeing Ellie's figure on the porch, wearing a dark sweater and holding a teacup. There was nothing special about that moment, just the familiar nod of greeting, and then everyone went about their business. By nearly 9, Megan Colton, the person who helped Ellie with daily tasks, stopped by as usual and said Ellie was still inside when she arrived. Megan left the neighborhood shortly after, and no one else saw Ellie from that point on. The afternoon passed without any contact from Ellie, which was inherently unusual because she typically called a niece in Washington at lunchtime. Repeated calls went unanswered, sent messages showed no read receipts, and Ellie's door remained silently closed when acquaintances stopped by to check. From initial worry, a sense of unease began to spread as darkness fell, streetlights came on, and Ellie's small apartment remained in absolute darkness. By early evening, after multiple unsuccessful attempts to reach her distant family, and Megan agreed that the situation was no longer normal. They called the Corvallis Police Department to report that Ellie Warren, a 58-year-old woman living alone on SW 3rd Street, had vanished without a trace. When the call from the family and Megan Colton was transferred to the Corvallis Police Department on the evening of October 11, 2011, the missing person report intake system was activated according to standard procedure for cases with risk factors. The dispatcher recorded the initial information about Eleanor Ellie Warren, female, 58 years old, living alone in a small apartment on SW 3rd Street, with unstable health in recent years, and regularly needing daily assistance to manage her activities. Notably, Ellie maintained fairly regular contact habits with family, especially a niece living in Washington State, rarely missing a call. The fact that she hadn't answered the phone or messages all day convinced the family that this situation went beyond ordinary risks. As the initial information was compiled and transferred to the field unit, night shift officers began asking more detailed questions of the reporters to determine the severity. Consistent answers from the family showed that Ellie had no habit of leaving home without her phone, and certainly no history of voluntarily being absent. Her declining health, including respiratory issues, chronic pain, and some mobility problems, made it unlikely she could travel far or wander for long periods. Based on these factors, Police classified the case as medium risk escalating, meaning no immediate evidence of violence or accident, but higher potential risk due to the victim's medical condition and the clear abnormality in communication behavior. The unit recorded a full physical description of Ellie, approximately 5'3" tall, slim build, shoulder-length silver hair, often wearing a dark sweater on cold mornings. Information about Ellie rarely leaving home alone, her simple daily habits, and limited mobility led police to rule out common scenarios like long walks or being in crowded areas. Officers also asked about Ellie's closest relationships, who saw her daily, who had access to her home, and who knew her health and schedule well. Megan Colton appeared in most answers, but at the time of intake, this information was treated only as background data, not yet suspicious. To assess urgency, police considered 3 factors. First, Ellie's age and health put her at high risk if something unexpected happened. Second, her ability to handle emergencies was rated low. And third, the time since her disappearance had already stretched too many hours beyond normal behavior. Combining these criteria, the case was escalated to priority handling that night. The initial response protocol was established immediately. Police created an official missing person file, set the last sighting timestamp that same morning, and verified personal information to check for any transactions, communication signals, or activity data recorded after the reported disappearance. Data from the post office, nearby hospitals, and public transit systems were also requested for preliminary checks to see if Ellie had appeared at any public points that day. Officers simultaneously asked the family for more details on items Ellie usually carried when leaving home, but did not analyze this deeply in the early stage to avoid hasty assumptions. Meanwhile, a small team was assigned to return to Ellie's area to assess the feasibility of an outer perimeter search at dawn. Although not yet treated as a criminal situation, police determined that the faster the response, the greater the chance of identifying any initial direction of movement, if any. All these steps aim to create a systematic foundation for the upcoming search, while establishing a baseline of information and timelines for comparison in subsequent investigation phases. Immediately after completing the missing person intake file, Corvallis police deployed the first step in the field information gathering process, verifying witnesses living near Ellie Warren's home, to reconstruct the most accurate timeline of the morning of October 11th. The area around Ellie's apartment was a row of low-rise buildings, mostly long-term rentals, where neighbors often recognized faces but rarely interfered in each other's lives. However, the stability of this residential area gave police hope of obtaining key observations, as most residents followed fixed schedules, making anything out of the ordinary easy to notice. The investigation team knocked on doors, starting with apartments directly facing Ellie's front yard. Elderly residents nearby confirmed they did not see Ellie leave the house that morning, except for one who said they saw her on the porch earlier, around 8 o'clock. This person described Ellie wearing a dark sweater, standing alone as usual. When asked about unusual signs, like arguments, loud noises, or strangers appearing, they all said they heard or saw nothing suspicious. A younger neighbor, leaving for work between 7:30 and 8 a.m., said he noticed Megan Colton's car parked at the curb around 8:30, but didn't know exactly when she left. Police noted this as it matched Megan's prior statement, identifying it as a cross-verifiable timestamp. Expanding outreach to homes within a few dozen meters, police obtained another notable piece of information. A woman living 2 apartments away said around 8:15, she heard a door closing sound from Ellie's direction. Though she didn't see anyone, the sound was clear enough to catch her attention, as it wasn't wind or typical engine noise. Police logged this timestamp, marking it as potentially related to when Ellie left, or when someone else was in the area. However, since it was just a sound without visual confirmation, its conclusive value remained limited and needed supporting data. The team continued gathering descriptions of area movement that morning. A small grocery store owner at the corner said he didn't see Ellie stop by that morning, though she occasionally bought a few items on good health days. The owner also said the store's security camera was operational, but low resolution, and mainly facing the parking lot, not the pedestrian path along Ellie's home. Still, police obtained the morning footage to check for strangers in the area. This camera data captured images of a few locals passing by, a delivery truck stopping for minutes, and a silver sedan driving through the neighborhood around the time Ellie was last seen. However, no direct images showed Ellie leaving. At a convenience store 2 blocks away, security cameras facing the main road allowed police to monitor morning traffic flow. They reviewed footage segment by segment, cross-referencing the door-closing sound timestamp and Megan's car parking time. Preliminary results showed no one resembling Ellie walking through the monitored area, and no notable unusual activity in the short period after 8 a.m. From all records, police compiled a timeline of discrete but important events. Ellie seen on the porch around 8, a door-closing sound around 8:15, Megan's car nearby around 8:30, and no witnesses seeing Ellie after that. Simultaneously, no visual evidence showed Ellie leaving the neighborhood via the main road, appearing in convenience store or traffic intersection cameras. Though this timeline wasn't enough for a specific investigative hypothesis, it outlined the short window when Ellie's presence was abruptly interrupted. Police concluded that witness statements had created a critical foundation for the next analysis step, determining when Ellie left, if she left at all, and who was near the area in those key minutes. With information gathered from neighborhood witnesses and a basic timeline established, the missing person team returned to Ellie Warren's apartment for an initial check to confirm whether she was inside. The goal of this entry was limited to searching for the victim's direct presence, without detailed searching or seizing items, as the case was still classified as an undetermined missing person. Ellie's apartment was in an old one-story row, with the main entrance through a small wooden porch, where she often stood in the mornings. When officers unlocked the door with a spare key provided by Megan Colton, they called Ellie's name several times to ensure they didn't miss her resting or unconscious in a hidden corner, gestured. The complete silence indicated no one inside, but protocol required checking each room. Ellie's apartment had a simple layout: a living room open to a small kitchen, 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. Entering the living room, officers noted the overall tidy scene, furniture arranged per long-term resident habits, no signs of major disturbance. Light from outside, filtered through thin curtains, casting a pale glow over the space typical of old homes in the area. Ellie's bedroom was observed to check if she was resting. The bed was neatly made, blankets and pillows in usual positions, no signs Ellie had left in a hurry. The bathroom and kitchen showed no emergency situations like slips, breaks, or accident signs. The entire apartment layout gave the impression Ellie had a normal day before suddenly losing contact, but it was unclear when or how she left. Notably, in this check, police did not open drawers, closely examine personal items, or treat it as a search, since there was no legal basis to consider it a crime scene. All observations were limited to plain view, per initial access scope. Officers followed this to avoid altering the apartment's state before escalating investigation. After confirming Ellie wasn't home, the team cross-referenced witness information and concluded the apartment provided no direct clues at this stage. This made external search options more critical, as Ellie's disappearance range was completely undetermined, and the possibility she left needing assistance couldn't be ruled out. Per protocol for high-risk missing persons, officers reported to the field commander to prioritize searching outside the apartment, starting with nearby walking paths, green areas, adjacent parks, and common routes around SW 3rd Street. The goal was to quickly determine if Ellie left the residence on foot or by vehicle, and assess any intersection points where she might have stopped between her last sighting and family losing contact. Leaving Ellie's apartment without clear accident or incident signs led police to prioritize expanded external search over further indoor focus, as all signs indicated she was simply not at home, with no direct evidence of danger inside. The decision to shift focus outward was based on the many hours since her last sighting to report, and accelerating the initial search could help timely narrow any movement direction, if any. Immediately after completing the apartment check and confirming that Ellie Warren was not inside, the police force shifted to deploying a search outside the area, starting with a 1-mile radius around where Ellie lived. This is a standard response step in missing person cases with risk factors, especially when there is no clear information about the victim's direction of movement. The goal of this phase was to scan the short routes Ellie might have taken that morning, while determining whether anyone saw her after the last confirmed witness sighting. The search team was divided into several small groups, each responsible for a portion of the residential area around Estobo 3rd Street. One group walked along the main roadways, checking curbs, sidewalks, empty lots, and front yards to see if Ellie might have paused somewhere while walking. Due to Ellie's limited health, police focused on observing places where she might stop to rest or steady herself, including low steps, public benches, and gently sloping road sections. However, there were no traces, such as a scarf, jacket, or left-behind items, indicating Ellie had gone in this direction. Another group was assigned to check small parks and green spaces in the area, including the nearest park a few minutes' walk from Ellie's home. Since that morning was chilly with mist and the ground still damp, police looked for footprints, skid marks, or unusually disturbed soil. Results showed every location intact, with no signs of recent pedestrian activity, especially someone moving slowly and needing balance like Ellie. The search team also swept the area near the local bus stop, though according to family and acquaintances, Ellie rarely used public transportation due to mobility difficulties. Although the chance of her reaching the bus stop was low, police still checked because it was a traffic point with cameras and often had footprints or morning resident appearances. Coordinators asked people present that morning, bus drivers, and reviewed schedules for the time frame Ellie disappeared. No witnesses reported seeing Ellie in this range, and no camera footage showed her approaching the stop. The sweep continued expanding to pedestrian paths, connecting Ellie's housing area to nearby streets. These were narrow, low-traffic roads, mainly leading to other homes or parking lots. Police checked for abandoned objects or signs Ellie had passed, such as scratches on the ground, dropped items, or any landscape changes. All showed no victim-related signs. When scanning the entire 1-mile radius yielded no specific results, the search force began compiling a list of places Ellie might frequent based on daily habits, health condition, and acquaintance statements. One factor considered was that Ellie had no fixed daily schedule, but she had familiar locations. A small supermarket about half a mile from home, the local post office, and a household goods store she occasionally visited for essentials. Police noted all these locations and contacted the stores to ask about Ellie's appearance on October 11th, but none confirmed she had been there that morning. Additionally, a few more personal spots, like areas Ellie went to breathe fresh air or lesser-known points, were described by acquaintances. However, due to Ellie's weak health and rare long trips, police assessed the likelihood of her walking beyond 1 mile as very low. Moreover, the absence of any signs from residents, cameras, or traces on walking paths led police to lean toward the possibility that Ellie did not travel far on her own after her last sighting. Ultimately, after hours of continuous searching, the coordinating team noted that the entire residential area near Ellie's home, including roadways, paths, parks, and public transit points, provided no clear clues. This information was included in the overview report, concluding that if Ellie left the area on foot, she would have appeared in the view of one of the witnesses or surrounding cameras. The reality that no one saw her raised major questions about the victim's direction of movement, while determining the need to expand the search beyond the immediate area to see if any data indicated Ellie left by vehicle or involved intervention beyond her own mobility. After completing the 1-mile radius search without obtaining any traces, Corvallis police decided to expand the search scope and mobilize specialized forces, including the K-9 unit and SR search and rescue team. This was the next step in the protocol when the victim was high risk and all signs indicated they might need immediate assistance. The K-9 unit was deployed first, due to its ability to track scents from the victim's last known location. The handler brought a working dog to Ellie Warren's front porch, where witnesses said they saw her around 8 a.m. on October 11th. The K9 was given an item with Ellie's distinctive scent to start the task. Initially, the scent trail led around the front yard area, moving toward the tree-lined road section, then down the sidewalk along the street edge. The following team thought the scent matched accounts of Ellie often standing on the porch in the mornings. However, near the major road connecting Estable 3rd Street to other traffic routes, the K9 suddenly lost the trail. Handlers tried moving in various directions from this point, but the dog could not recover the scent path, which often happens when the victim may have entered a vehicle or been moved from the area without leaving ground traces. This was a significant note because it indicated that if Ellie left home, she did not continue walking on residential streets, but likely departed the area in another way. While the K9 worked at the scene, the SAR team expanded the search to nearby natural areas. McDonald Dunn Forest, not far from Ellie's home, was one of the first places checked due to dense terrain, complex trails, and occasional local visits for walking or pet exercise. However, given Ellie's weak health and limited walking ability, police assessed the probability of her entering the forest alone as low but still conducted a sweep to rule out unexpected scenarios. SAR divided into two groups, one following main trails and one scanning bushes and lowlands where accidents like falls could occur. The sweep found no clothing, items, or human signs within the past 24 hours. Damp ground and leaves, showing no additional disturbance, reinforced that no one like Ellie had passed through this area on the disappearance morning. Afterward, the search force moved to the Willamette River bank, with many paths along the water edge. Though Ellie did not often visit this area, police checked due to complex terrain and unexcludable accident possibilities. SAR used small boats to scan along the water edge, while a walking group checked nearby land for shoe prints, personal items, or slip signs. However, the riverbank remained intact. No new footprints, no sunken soil points, and no suspicious objects floating or caught in weeds. Early autumn weather also aided trace reading as damp mist and wet leaves could retain prints for hours if someone passed, but results were completely empty. Combining all K9 and SAR results, police formed a clear picture: no traces of Ellie walking out of the neighborhood, no appearance in the forest, none near the river, and no physical clues left in the expanded search area. The K9 losing the trail at the major road and inability to recreate the scent in any direction was a particularly important detail, indicating the victim likely left that point without ground traces, such as entering a vehicle or being taken. The search force's interim report concluded that Ellie Warren's direction of movement was completely undetermined, and no field data from the expanded radius allowed inference that Ellie walked to any specific location after her last morning sighting. This forced police to reassess the approach, reevaluate known information, and prepare to shift to other analysis directions to determine what happened to this 58-year-old woman who rarely left home and had very regular daily habits. When the expanded K9 and SAR search ended without yielding any traces or direction for Ellie Warren, police returned to the only remaining starting point: Ellie's home itself. The previous check was merely an initial observation to confirm the victim's presence, but with no external clues found, the investigation team decided to obtain a comprehensive search warrant for the apartment. The warrant was approved by the court based on high-risk factors: age, Ellie's health condition, and prolonged communication interruption, allowing police to conduct a full search to determine if any signs indicated the victim left involuntarily or encountered an incident inside the apartment. When officers returned to the house the next afternoon, they unlocked the door, established a control area, and began a much more rigorous check than before. The apartment still retained its quiet appearance, afternoon light filtering through curtains, creating an unusual stillness compared to the investigation's urgency. This time, every area was thoroughly examined, from tabletops, chairs, floors, to bedroom and kitchen positions. Only now did officers notice details they had not focused on previously due to limited observation scope. Ellie's cell phone still on the table, not charged or used since the previous night. A small wallet with ID, bank cards, and some cash still in the cabinet by the entrance. House keys not taken, instead placed on Ellie's familiar wooden tray, and a daily prescription medication box, still intact on the low table near the window. With no signs the victim took any essential items when leaving. These were the first collections that truly made officers pause. The vast majority of adults leaving home, even for a few minutes, still take at least one of these items: keys, phone, or wallet. But all four essential items remained, and this did not fit any behavior in Ellie's described normal travel patterns. Moreover, the morning medication box was a critical factor. Ellie needed them on a regular schedule, and not taking them with her already weak health was profoundly unusual. All these details accumulated into a far more concerning new picture than the initial assessment. Officers continued checking other apartment points for missing items, position changes, or disturbance signs that might suggest the victim left confused or in emergency. However, the entire apartment retained its familiar simplicity and order. No struggle signs, no displaced furniture, no breaks or hasty departure traces. This made officers even more suspicious, because if Ellie left voluntarily and normally, she was unlikely to abandon every important item. But if she left in emergency or was forced, disturbance signs usually appear. Here, there were none. This put police in a situation where no common scenario matched all observed data. While scanning additional personal storage areas, officers noted that daily light work items Ellie used indoors were still in usual positions, further reinforcing the assumption that Ellie had no intent for a long trip or any activity requiring preparation. The apartment revealed nothing about destination, plans, or intent to leave, if any. After completing documentation and photographing key positions for future cross-reference, officers gathered to assess the situation overall. The internal report at that time noted that finding Ellie's phone, wallet, keys, and medication in the apartment was a significant indicator that the victim likely did not leave her residence voluntarily. Though no signs of criminal activity or violence inside, the inconsistency of items remaining in place was enough to escalate the risk assessment, shifting the case from a standard missing person to one with suspicious elements. Police noted that typically in adult disappearances, especially solitary individuals, leaving all ID and essentials usually only occurs when the victim leaves without control or opportunity to take anything. This led officers to question whether Ellie left of her own accord, and if not, what caused her to depart the apartment suddenly without essential items. Upon collecting all information and completing the search report, police concluded that Ellie's apartment was not merely where the victim was absent, but contained notable unusual elements. This was the first time the investigation team viewed the case as potentially beyond a natural disappearance, forcing them to change approach to deeper examine other possibilities related to Ellie Warren's vanishing. After the thorough apartment search revealed that Ellie Warren left behind all essential items and took no personal belongings, police moved to compiling timeline data to reconstruct the full 24 hours before her disappearance. This is one of the key investigative measures to determine whether Ellie showed any unusual behavior on October 10th or the morning of October 11th, while assessing the accuracy of statements from those near the victim, especially Megan Colton, who was reportedly in most contact with Ellie in the days closest to the disappearance. First, police gathered statements from witnesses already contacted in the early days, including the direct neighbor across from Ellie's apartment, the neighbor who saw her on the porch around 8 a.m., and the woman who heard a door closing at 8:15. From these statements, police established a timeline with three main markers: Ellie appearing on the porch around 8, a sound from Ellie's area around 8:15, and no one seeing her after that. Simultaneously, they added data from Ellie's niece, who usually spoke with her in the evenings but couldn't reach her for several consecutive hours from the afternoon of October 11th. The niece said Ellie was completely mentally fine on October 10th, and mentioned that Megan would stop by on the morning of October 11th to help with some chores. From here, police cross-referenced with the schedule Megan Colton provided in her initial statement. Megan said she arrived at Ellie's around 9 and saw Ellie still inside at that time. According to Megan, Ellie showed no unusual signs, just saying she didn't feel well and wanted to rest. Megan also stated she left the area around 9:20 and did not return. When cross-checking this statement with witnesses, police noted the first inconsistency. Neighbors said they saw Megan's car parked nearby from around 8:30 to 8:45, nearly half an hour earlier than when Megan said she arrived at Ellie's. Additionally, the neighbor heard the door closing at 8:15, which could relate to someone entering or leaving Ellie's, but this timestamp did not match Megan's account. When questioned further, Megan insisted she arrived around 9 and couldn't recall exact minutes, but police logged this inconsistency into the report because Megan's presence near Ellie's could directly relate to the time frame Ellie was last seen. Next, police re-examined Ellie's activity on October 10th. From the niece's account, Ellie called in the evening with no unusual mental or behavioral signs. Another neighbor also confirmed Ellie went out to the porch around 8 p.m. to water plants, which she did every evening when weather permitted. This data showed Ellie maintained normal routines on the last confirmed safe day. Police continued reviewing Megan's previously stated personal schedule. She said she went to the grocery store early on the morning of October 11th, brought a few items to Ellie's, stayed 10-15 minutes, and then left. However, witness data showed Megan's car present about 30 minutes earlier than stated. Additionally, when asked in detail about leaving the neighborhood, Megan couldn't provide specifics and only said she thought around 9:20 or 9:30, while a morning commuter witness said he still saw Megan's car parked in front of Ellie's when leaving home at 8:45. A second inconsistency emerged when police examined communication timelines. The niece confirmed Ellie didn't respond to messages before noon, but Megan stated Ellie was fully alert when she left. This raised the question of whether Ellie was truly in normal functioning state when Megan saw her. From all collected data, police reconstructed a tight timeline. Evening of October 10th. Ellie normal, morning of October 11th. Appeared on porch around 8. Notable door closing sound at 8:15. Megan's car in area from around 8:30, and no one saw Ellie after this time frame. When cross-referencing Megan's statement, police noted at least 2 mismatched time periods and 1 ambiguity in behavior related to when Ellie might have vanished. These inconsistencies were not enough to conclude the case's nature, but sufficient for police to suspect that Megan's described schedule did not accurately reflect actual events during Ellie's last sighting, creating a critical time gap the investigation team needed to clarify. After completing the reconstruction of the 24 hours before Ellie Warren's disappearance, police shifted to analyzing her cell phone data, a crucial step in any 2011 missing person case, though technology then was not as advanced as later years, but still provided valuable location and behavior indicators. Ellie's phone, a simple model without continuous GPS, only stored call history, messages, and connections to the nearest cell tower. Police obtained data from the service provider and began evaluating each timestamp before the device went completely inactive. Phone logs showed the last call Ellie made was the evening of October 10th, speaking with her niece in Washington. The call ended without unusual signs, and no further outgoing calls followed. On the morning of October 11th, the system recorded a few incoming messages from family members, but none were opened. This data aligned with Ellie last seen around 8 a.m. and no responses after. However, the notable point was the last message showing device activity around 7:42 a.m., when the phone was still connected to the tower near Ellie's home. After this, the device generated no network activity, no sending, receiving, or periodic data pings as phones do in standby. This was particularly important because most phones, even unused, create short periodic mobile network connections. Ellie's phone, going completely silent after 7:42 a.m., indicated the device was either turned off, lost power, or placed in a signal-blocking environment. Police requested the carrier's technical department to provide a map of the latest connections to determine the device's relative position and received data showing Ellie's phone's final cell ping originated from the tower near SW 3rd Street, only a few hundred meters from her apartment. The tower's coverage was broad, but signal strength indicated the device was very close. Close enough to nearly confirm Ellie had not left the residential area at that time. Upon deeper analysis, police determined Ellie's phone did not transition through any other cell towers from her last sighting to family reporting her missing. This meant the phone was not on a moving vehicle, not taken to another area, and showed no signs of relocation. All data reinforced the likelihood that the device was disabled or left inactive in or near Ellie's living area. When cross-referencing with Megan Colton's statement and witnesses, police noted an anomaly. If Ellie left after 8 as Megan said, her phone, which she usually carried, should have recorded at least some new connections while moving through area streets. But no cell pings occurred after 7:42, indicating the device never left the initial coverage zone. This raised a critical question. If Ellie left as witnesses described, why did the phone show no movement signals? Even if she forgot it, the phone remained home and should continue pinging the nearest tower until battery depletion or shutdown. But the carrier confirmed no further pings, which rarely happens unless the phone was actively turned off or in fully signal-blocked conditions, less likely in an apartment environment. With these facts, police made an initial determination that Ellie's phone ceased activity very close to her last sighting time, and most importantly, no evidence showed the device moved from the SW 3rd Street area on the disappearance morning. This conclusion, combined with K9 losing the trail at the major road and no cameras capturing Ellie, further reinforced the assumption that the victim did not leave on foot voluntarily. Cell tower data became a pivotal factor for police to determine that Ellie's entire disappearance likely occurred within a very narrow range around her apartment. Simultaneously, this information led police to suspect that if Ellie left the residential area by vehicle, she may have done so without her phone, which did not align with the normal behavior family previously described. All these elements led the investigation to temporarily conclude there was no evidence Ellie left the area under her own power. And the phone going inactive exactly at her last sighting was an anomaly requiring deeper investigation in subsequent steps. While phone data showed Ellie Warren did not leave the area around her home on the disappearance morning, police continued checking another critical information source, Ellie's banking activity on October 11, 2011. Adult missing person cases are often cross-referenced with financial transactions to determine if the victim took proactive actions before vanishing or if someone used their accounts unusually. The bank where Ellie held her account provided transaction history copies, and one entry immediately drew attention at 10:17 a.m. that day. A $200 cash withdrawal from an ATM about 2 kilometers from Ellie's home. This was the only transaction that day, and theoretically could be legitimate if Ellie needed cash. However, in the context of her disappearance and no one seeing her leave, this transaction became an anomaly. Police had to examine closely. Police immediately requested ATM video footage to check if the withdrawer was Ellie. However, this ATM was installed in the mid-2000s with low resolution and limited angle. The video showed a medium-built person in a dark jacket at the machine, but the image was very blurry, unable to identify face, gait, or specific features. Seeing only the user's silhouette made the video nearly valueless for direct identification. That morning's light mist and insufficient sunlight further hindered analysis. Bank technicians confirmed the video quality was typical for the era's equipment and could not be much improved. When comparing to Ellie's height and build description, police found the video figure not easily distinguishable from others based solely on body outline. And since Ellie often wore jackets in autumn, color details did not narrow the scope. With limited video information, police returned to surveying. Did Ellie habitually withdraw cash in the morning like this? Ellie's niece said she rarely withdrew directly at ATMs and mostly had others accompany her if needed, due to mobility and operation difficulties. This made the solo 10:17 a.m. withdrawal harder to explain. However, police could not rule out Ellie asking someone to withdraw for her, and the first person tied to her daily life was Megan Colton. When asked about the transaction, Megan immediately confirmed she made the withdrawal. The explanation was that Ellie asked her to withdraw to cover upcoming expenses. According to Megan, Ellie gave the bank card and PIN for the withdrawal, and she just followed instructions. When police asked why Ellie needed cash on the disappearance morning, Megan gave a vague answer that Ellie wanted to buy a few things that week and needed cash on hand. Though the explanation did not directly contradict prior information, it still created mild suspicion because the cash request occurred just hours before Ellie vanished, especially coinciding with when family lost all contact. Police checked prior transaction history and found Ellie did cash withdrawals, but not on a fixed schedule, and the most recent before disappearance showed no unusual changes. Though Megan was involved in most prior withdrawals, this was not enough to establish fraud, as Ellie likely relied on Megan for external tasks. Combining these factors, police determined the October 11th ATM transaction was important data, but insufficient for conclusions. Megan's statement, though not fully matching her presence timing at Ellie's per witnesses, was not dismissed because proxy withdrawals were plausible given their prior relationship. The ATM camera did not narrow the withdrawer's identity, and the transaction, $200, was not unusual for personal spending needs. Thus, police initially concluded this financial transaction showed no clear fraud or criminal signs. However, the transaction timing, coincidence with Ellie's disappearance phase, and direct link to Megan led police to continue considering it as a factor for cross-referencing in the overall case analysis. When the data on bank transactions, phone activity, and witness statements began to show inconsistencies, the police shifted to a deeper verification of the person with the most frequent contact with Ellie Warren in the days before her disappearance. Megan Colton. This step aimed to evaluate both the context of their relationship and the possibility that Megan could have access to Ellie's assets, personal information, or elements related to her financial life. According to accounts from the family and those living in the area, Ellie and Megan had known each other for a few years before Ellie vanished. Megan occasionally helped Ellie with cleaning, grocery shopping, or light household tasks, especially during periods when Ellie's health declined. Megan's frequent presence led many neighbors to believe she was someone Ellie trusted, and clearly Ellie relied on this support for some daily tasks. However, when the police specifically asked about the level of closeness between the two, Ellie's family admitted they were unaware of the content of private conversations between Ellie and Megan, as well as whether Ellie had ever asked Megan for help with financial matters. To assess more accurately, the police conducted a background check on Megan through the state database. The results showed Megan had some financial issues in the past, including credit card debt, late payments, and a few small loans that were overdue. Additionally, the records noted a minor violation related to personal information fraud during the time Megan worked at a retail store many years ago. Although this violation was handled administratively and did not leave a major criminal record, it still caught the police's attention because it involved finance and the use of personal information, two factors that could intersect with Ellie's situation. Upon further investigation, the police discovered that in the year before Ellie's disappearance, Megan had changed jobs several times and had periods of unstable income. This was not evidence of criminal activity, but it was important background data when considering the behavior of someone directly involved in the victim's daily life. In the next step, the police focused on assessing the extent to which Megan could access Ellie's assets and accounts. Megan stated that Ellie had given her the bank card and PIN multiple times to withdraw money or pay for some household expenses. When asked if Ellie had ever allowed Megan to manage her finances on her behalf, Megan denied it and said all withdrawals were at Ellie's direct request. However, Ellie's family provided information that they were unaware Ellie had ever given full bank card access to anyone. This created a point of note. Ellie's allowing someone else to use her card did not appear in any discussions with family members, even though she often shared many personal matters with them. Cross-referencing this with bank data, the police noted that in the 3 months closest to the disappearance, Ellie's account had many small transactions, like grocery purchases or bill payments, that looked like everyday expenses. However, the bank could not determine whether the person making the transactions was Ellie or someone else, as most were direct payments or cash withdrawals. Nevertheless, the fact that Megan was the only one helping Ellie with mobility and personal tasks led the police to conclude that the possibility of Megan accessing the card and Ellie's financial information was entirely real. When asked about Ellie's financial situation, Megan described that Ellie was not wealthy but had enough to live on and no major difficulties. However, Ellie's niece said she was frugal with spending and rarely withdrew cash unless absolutely necessary. The difference in these two descriptions, combined with Megan being the one directly handling withdrawals on the day of the disappearance, led the police to question the accuracy of Megan's statements and the extent to which she might manage Ellie's assets without involving the family. The police also checked whether Megan was listed in any power of attorney documents, and the results showed no documents confirming her role in official financial support. From all the data collected, the investigation team noted that the relationship between Ellie and Megan involved dependency in daily life, but was unclear regarding financial boundaries. Megan was the person with the most access to Ellie in the time near the disappearance, had the ability to use Ellie's bank account, and had a history of unstable finances, plus a past violation related to personal information. These factors were not enough to confirm wrongdoing, but sufficient for the police to note that Megan's role in the days before Ellie vanished needed to be examined more seriously and cross-checked carefully with all case evidence. Although the police had gathered many fragmented pieces of information related to the last time Ellie Warren was seen, Megan Colton's schedule, and unusual bank account activity, everything still remained at the level of suspicion without any physical evidence to determine what happened to Ellie. Expanded searches found no body, no clothing, belongings, signs of movement, or any indication that Ellie left the area on her own. Ellie's phone shut off abruptly, neighborhood cameras recorded no relevant images, and K9 units lost the scent right at the main road near the house. This left the case in a difficult information void. No body meant no way to determine injuries, cause of death, or any signs of violence. No traces outside the scene meant the police could not prove Ellie left the home under duress, was abducted, or had an accident. All data suggested Ellie did not leave voluntarily, but there was no direct evidence to prove a crime occurred. In that context, after many weeks of reviewing every possible investigative direction, field reports all returned to the same conclusion: no further progress could be made without new leads. The investigation at this point stalled due to a lack of both physical evidence and technical data. Results from witness checks, cameras, cell towers, and financial activity all provided hints but did not form a strong enough logical chain to conclude anything. No breakthroughs appeared over a long period, and the case lacked the legal foundation to shift to a formal criminal investigation. Therefore, Ellie's file was classified as unsolved missing person, a disappearance with unknown cause, and no new information in real time. This is a status many missing person cases fall into when initial factors are insufficient to determine crime or accident. The case remained in the system, but was no longer actively investigated, as in the early stages. From 2012, Ellie Warren's file was gradually moved to the archives of the Corvallis Police Department, where long-term missing person cases are stored, awaiting additional information from the community or random future discoveries. In the following years, there were no reports of anyone citing Ellie, no new financial data from the bank account, and no one coming forward with items or traces that could relate to her. Everything stopped at an unusually quiet level, and Ellie's disappearance became one of the local unsolved cases. Although the file was occasionally reviewed whenever another disappearance occurred in the area, or when bank data was updated, the police never found new leads. Residents near Ellie gradually moved away, the neighborhood landscape changed over time, and old camera data became hard to access or was deleted due to limited storage systems in 2011. Over many years, Ellie's disappearance existed as an unanswered question, preserved in old case files with the slim hope that one day someone would uncover a detail enough to break the wall of silence that had persisted since the day Ellie Warren vanished. In the years after Ellie Warren was recorded as missing, and the file was shifted to unsolved missing person status, most activities related to the case nearly came to a halt. However, starting in 2012, a series of unusual financial transactions gradually appeared on accounts in Ellie's name, something initially unnoticed because bank transaction alert systems at the time lacked automatic suspicion reporting mechanisms. It was only when the bank conducted a periodic review at the end of 2013 and discovered that an account belonging to a reported missing person continued to show transaction activity that this data was sent to the Corvallis Police Department as supplemental information. The police at that time did not reopen a criminal investigation, but noted the data because it directly related to the missing person. The first notable thing was that Ellie's primary bank account remained active, and in the 2 years 2012-2013, there were many purchases at grocery stores, discount supermarkets, and some low-cost clothing stores in the Corvallis and Salem areas. All these transactions looked like normal living expenses, with each valued between 10 and 40 USD. However, when reviewing Ellie's financial history before 2011, the police noted that Ellie was a very frugal consumer, rarely shopping at multiple locations and usually only buying essentials. In contrast, the new transactions appeared at a regular frequency and spanned many months, indicating someone was actively and planned maintaining use of the account. By 2014, the bank reported a larger anomaly. A new credit card was opened in Ellie's name at a major retail chain. The card application recorded an address matching Ellie's old one, but the contact phone number was updated to a new one, not matching the information Ellie used before disappearing. Credit card approval systems at the time did not fully perform in-person identity verification like later, so the card was approved based on old records and Ellie's prior credit score. This detail drew attention because Ellie had not appeared in any civil activities since her 2011 disappearance, yet financial records showed someone using her identity to open new accounts. Within a year of the credit card being opened, hundreds of small transactions were recorded, paying utility bills, buying low-cost furniture, household appliances, cosmetics, clothing, and some online transactions of modest but regular value. On the surface, all these transactions did not exhibit sudden fraud characteristics common in professional identity theft. Instead, they mirrored the spending pattern of a frugal individual. This made it hard for police at the time to conclude illegal account use, and the case was not reopened. However, a key detail emerged when police requested the bank provide IP information for online transactions and lists of card swipe locations. Most transactions occurred in Salem, where Megan Colton had moved to live after 2013. Though this could not be seen as direct evidence for charges, it was a strong indirect link for police to note in the file that Megan likely used Ellie's financial information after she disappeared. This aligned with Megan admitting she had held Ellie's card and PIN, though she said it was at request. Card swipes at stores were also within the geographic range near where Megan lived and worked during 2014-2016. Police continued analyzing bills sent through the banking system and found some orders delivered to addresses matching Megan's temporary residences during that period. Due to lack of search warrants and the file not yet shifted to criminal investigation, police could only note but not take stronger action. By 2016, 2 small loans were opened in Ellie's name at an independent finance shop. These loans were paid late and then turned into bad debt. Many businesses, when contacted by police for verification, provided copies of loan applications and signatures on contracts. When compared to Ellie's real signature stored in bank records before 2011, police saw clear differences, but due to years past and no direct victim confirmation, financial institutions simply closed the files as bad debt without pursuing civil or criminal action. When compiling all information from 2012 to 2018, police saw an increasingly clear pattern. Ellie's identity was being used continuously to meet another person's financial needs. The small, regular transactions that stayed under limits and avoided alerting systems showed the perpetrator understood how to avoid unusual flags. These activities spanned years and locations, but had a common point, all related to areas where Megan had lived or worked. Ellie's family, when informed of these transactions, confirmed Ellie had never used online transactions, never opened credit cards, and certainly never taken out loans in the years before disappearing. This reinforced suspicion that Ellie's identity had been used illegally for years without timely detection. Although no legal action was taken at that time, police clearly noted in the file from 2012 to 2018, all financial activity in Ellie Warren's name did not reflect a missing person, but instead strong signs of identity use of the missing person by an individual closely connected to Ellie before she vanished. This was the first discovery indicating the disappearance might involve intentional conduct, rather than simply an unexplained vanishing of a middle-aged woman living alone. By 2022, when the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit conducted a review of long-term missing person cases in the state, under a periodic reassessment program, Ellie Warren's file was included in the review list due to numerous unusual characteristics compared to typical missing person cases. The fact that Ellie's bank account continued to have transactions for many years after her disappearance, along with the chain of financial activity overlapping with Megan Colton's residential areas, made the case stand out, and it was officially transferred to the Cold Case Unit for handling. After taking over, the investigation team opened the entire original file from 2011, including scene reports, witness statements, phone data, reports from the K9 and SR teams, as well as all financial records collected in the subsequent years. Their first objective was to assess whether the case had elements overlooked due to technological or resource limitations at the initial time. The investigation team began by re-examining every part of the original file. They noted that Ellie's apartment showed no signs of the victim leaving voluntarily, all important personal belongings were left behind, and the phone stopped functioning much earlier than the time anyone recorded Ellie as missing. These were factors that in 2011 were only considered unusual, but by 2022, with compiled data and the context of financial activities spanning many years, they became the basis for assessing higher risk. The Cold Case Unit also re-examined statements related to Megan Colton. They paid particular attention to the fact that the time Megan said she arrived at Ellie's house was completely inconsistent with witness statements from those living in the area. Megan being near Ellie's house about 30 minutes earlier, along with the sound of a door closing right at the timestamp when the victim was last seen, was re-evaluated not just as a contradiction, but as a timeline piece that could help reconstruct actual events. When compiling all the data, the cold case team concluded that Ellie's disappearance no longer fit the pattern of an adult voluntarily leaving their residence. Instead, factors such as belongings left behind, electronic devices abruptly stopping, and no appearance of any signs of leaving the area, even in traffic data, cameras or cell towers, indicated a high likelihood that Ellie did not decide to leave her apartment on her own. The new factors regarding bank transactions after 2011 played a particularly important role in risk assessment. The Cold Case Unit determined that the prolonged use of Ellie's identity over many years showed intervention by an individual with clear knowledge of the victim's habits and life, and the transactions began right after the day Ellie disappeared. This led them to a preliminary conclusion that the case had a very high criminalization factor, not simply a disappearance, but likely involving intentional harm or exploitation of the victim's identity after disappearance. After the overall assessment, the team decided on specific goals, fully reconstruct the entire sequence of events from the start, beginning from the evening of October 10, 2011, to the early hours of October 11th. They set requirements to cross-check every old timestamp using new technology, rescreen every statement with support from behavioral analysis and modern forensic techniques. Additionally, they re-evaluated all financial data from 2012 to 2018 to identify overlaps in location, time, and spending habits of the person making the transactions. The cold case unit realized that, despite many years passing and physical evidence almost non-existent, the connection between the anomalies, from the disappearance moment to subsequent financial activity, had never been examined as a continuous chain until they compiled everything. With a new approach and clear objectives, the investigation team began preparing for deeper analysis, leveraging modern technology and digital forensics to seek clues that in 2011 were simply impossible to exploit. This was the first time since Ellie disappeared that the case was re-evaluated comprehensively and systematically, opening the possibility for the first time in over a decade that the mystery of her disappearance might find a resolution. When the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit decided to fully reconstruct the sequence of Ellie Warren's disappearance, one of the most important data points they revisited was the ATM video recorded at 10:17 a.m. on October 11, 2011. The time of the $200 withdrawal from Ellie's account. In the 2011 file, this video was assessed as insufficient for identification due to low resolution, limited angle, and morning foggy light, making the image of the person at the ATM heavily blurred. However, by 2022, with advancements in AI image processing technology, the cold case unit saw an opportunity to reanalyze the video with expectations of obtaining information that was completely unattainable over a decade earlier. The digital team collected the entire ATM video recording, including frames before and after the transaction, for fuller data on body shape, movement speed, and standing posture. They used AI enhancement software based on multi-layer image restoration technology capable of analyzing motion and reconstructing body outlines based on estimated skeletal structure. This technology did not create new faces or add non-existent information, but only restored details from blurred data by predicting shape structures based on thousands of trained motion samples. After many hours of processing, the video was restructured to a level where general outlines were clearer: relative height, standing posture, head tilt, operation speed at the machine, and especially gait before approaching the ATM. Although the face in the video remained unidentifiable due to the rear side angle, the technical team initially determined that the body shape in the video had height and shoulder width ratios relatively matching Megan Colton's description more than Ellie Warren's. This led to the next analysis step, comparing gait and body posture with other videos featuring Megan. The cold case unit began collecting security camera footage from the years Megan lived in Corvallis and later Salem, including grocery store videos, parking lots where she worked, and traffic cameras recording pedestrian movement. These videos were not always sharp, but sufficient to identify movement characteristics. Megan had a gait with her right shoulder slightly pulled forward, left step longer than right, and a habit of slightly tilting her head when looking down or using machines. Simultaneously, Megan's body had a noticeable ratio between upper and lower body, slightly low hips and arms, often kept close to the body center when moving. The analysis team ran a motion comparison model between the enhanced ATM segment and Megan's videos, using body joint matching algorithms. Results showed high similarity in three feature groups: neck and shoulder tilt, foot rhythm and stance when raising hand to the pin pad. Parameters like 11-14 degree forward tilt when bending to check the ATM screen, or average 54-57 centimeters between steps. These metrics from the video all fell within Megan's characteristic movement range from other analyzed videos. When the forensics team ruled out the possibility it was Ellie, they had solid grounds. Ellie walked very slowly, often holding one hand to chair arms or railings, when standing long due to weak knees and slightly curved spine. In contrast, the person in the ATM video stood straighter, operated quickly, and maintained stable balance without signs of mobility difficulty. Ellie was also at least 2 to 3 inches shorter than the person in the video, based on estimates using the ATM machine height in frame. Besides body analysis, the technical team compared clothing. In the ATM video, the withdrawer wore a dark jacket with the hood folded down at the nape. Based on images of Megan wearing similar jackets in 2011 store cameras, the cold case unit noted coincidences in fabric thickness, jacket length, and sleeve shape. Though clothing was not conclusive, it reinforced similarity indices. Additionally, the investigation team analyzed the timing of the person's appearance in the video with the timeline described by witnesses near Ellie's house. According to neighbors, Megan's car was parked near Ellie's from about 8:30 a.m., and if calculating travel time from Ellie's area to the ATM location, the person appearing at 10:17 a.m. perfectly fit someone leaving Ellie's area and driving to the ATM. Combined with Ellie's post-2011 financial activity data, which linked to areas Megan lived in, the enhanced ATM video created a major breakthrough. This was the first time in over 10 years that police had visual evidence, though not facial identification, indicating Megan was very likely the person withdrawing from Ellie's account on the exact morning the victim disappeared. The analysis results were presented in detail by the digital team in the official report. Gait, body posture, and operation behavior, similarity exceeded 85% with Megan Colton's motion profile, far surpassing random coincidence probability for unrelated individuals. This was not complete criminal evidence, but strong, valuable data for reconstructing events of October 11, 2011. The report was seen as the first breakthrough in the cold case unit's reactivation of the Ellie Warren case after over a decade of no progress, opening possibilities to access other data sources once undervalued or limited by then technology. After reanalyzing the ATM video yielded the first breakthrough, the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit moved to another data source undervalued in the 2011 investigation phase, email activity and digital traces related to Ellie Warren in the days immediately after she was reported missing. The original file noted that two of Ellie's old friends received emails from her account on October 12 and 13, 1 to 2 days after Ellie disappeared. At that time, police only viewed this detail as a vague sign Ellie might still be alive or had gone somewhere, but did not evaluate deeply because the emails contained no specific location information and no warnings of danger or requests for help. However, by 2022, with metadata analysis and deleted email recovery technology far surpassing over a decade earlier, the cold case unit saw this as potentially crucial overlooked evidence. They started by requesting the email service provider provide full account history backups for Ellie, including deleted mail, login logs, and related metadata. Some data recovered quickly, but the most important part, the two emails sent after October 11th, were initially gone from the sender's inbox as they were deleted almost immediately after sending. However, because the provider retained technical logs for long periods, the cold case unit extracted archived versions in raw metadata form, including IP address, send time, and login device description. When analyzing metadata, the first discovery caught the investigation team's attention. Both emails were sent from an IP address belonging to a fiber optic line in a Salem residential area, not Corvallis, where Ellie lived. More importantly, this IP matched the address where Megan Colton registered internet use in late 2011, weeks after Ellie was reported missing. This match could not be coincidental, as technically Ellie had no reason to use a Salem IP when she never left Corvallis per any phone, camera, or witness data. Police continued cross-referencing email send times with Megan's stated timeline. Per the 2011 file, Megan said when Ellie disappeared, she had no idea where the victim went and had no contact with Ellie after the morning of October 11th. However, email metadata showed a device logging into Ellie's account on the evening of October 12th, just 1 day after disappearance, and performing 2 consecutive actions, sending emails to Ellie's friends, then deleting all drafts and sent messages from the account. The behavior of deleting data right after sending formed a characteristic pattern. The sender wanted to create the impression Ellie was still alive, but did not want to leave traces in the account. This led the investigation team to question, why would a supposedly missing person log into her email from a completely different IP and immediately erase all traces after sending messages. For deeper understanding, the technical team recovered the two emails' content. Though long deleted, metadata backups still contained headers and enough text to evaluate content. The two emails had a writing style unlike Ellie's previous emails. Family confirmed Ellie always wrote short emails, used few long sentences, and never wrote in a vague style. But the October 12th and 13 emails had markedly different phrasing, lengthy sentences, many phrases not Ellie's usual expressions, and both shared the same content, saying Ellie needed time for herself and wanted to be somewhere no one could find. Though presented to seem like a voluntary temporary departure, the tone clearly showed signs of being fabricated. Technically, metadata also showed the sender used Chrome browser on a Windows laptop, while Ellie only used an old computer with a different OS and no Chrome installed. This was an unignorable technical discrepancy. After confirming emails sent from Megan's residence IP, the cold case unit continued analyzing login logs from September to November 2011. Results showed Ellie's email account had only two login patterns, one from an IP near her home in months before disappearance, and two from Megan's home IP after Ellie vanished. No other IPs appeared, no signs of Ellie accessing from afar, no travel or movement to other locations. From all the above data, the investigation team concluded the two post-October 11 emails could not have been sent by Ellie and were highly likely created by someone intending to fabricate the impression Ellie left voluntarily. When combined with the enhanced ATM transaction data and body similarity analysis, a key conclusion emerged. The person behind the emails was likely the same as in the ATM video, and this pointed directly to Megan Colton. The Phase 2 Cold Case Unit report stated clearly, unauthorized login, sending fabricated emails, and immediate history deletion show intent to create evidence the victim was alive. This is a sign of deliberate conduct to conceal the victim's absence. With this conclusion, the investigation team had solid grounds to assert the two post-October 11 emails were not just anomalous, but an effort to create false evidence, and for the first time in over a decade, Ellie Warren's disappearance showed a clear element of intentional cover-up behavior. When the analysis of ATM video and email activity revealed numerous clear anomalies related to Megan Colton, the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit continued to expand into another critical data source: the cell tower connection history of mobile devices during the period when Ellie Warren disappeared. Although mobile positioning technology in 2011 was very limited, raw data from cell towers was still stored in the carrier's system as simple logs, and with modern forensic reconstruction tools, much information that was previously unreadable could now be partially recovered. The digital team requested all cell tower data related to the phone numbers of Ellie and Megan within the 48 hours surrounding the disappearance. Ellie's data was relatively straightforward. The device last pinged at 7:42 a.m. on October 11th and then went completely silent. This aligned with prior analysis and did not change the conclusion that Ellie's phone never left the SW 3rd Street area. However, Megan's data was far more complex. In the 2011 records, the carrier only provided general logs with low accuracy, showing no suspicious movement because Megan's device continuously connected to multiple coverage cells in the Corvallis and Salem areas over an extended period. But the cold case unit applied forensic reconstruction techniques, recreating the signal path from multiple towers based on three factors: signal strength, dwell time, and handover patterns between cells in the area. In this way, they attempted to retrace the entire connection journey of Megan's device on the morning of Ellie's disappearance. The recovery results were surprising and completely contrary to Megan's initial statement. She claimed that on the morning of October 11th, she arrived at Ellie's house around 9 o'clock, stayed for 10-15 minutes, and then left, afterward going straight home or to a nearby supermarket. However, forensic reconstruction showed that Megan's device began leaving the SW 3rd Street area earlier than she stated, specifically around 8:45 a.m. During the time, witnesses confirmed Megan's car was still parked near Ellie's house. Then, over the next 30 minutes, Megan's phone continuously connected to a sequence of cell towers stretching along the route leading south from Corvallis, indicating she left the residential area faster and farther than what she had told police. The data became particularly significant when cell towers recorded Megan's device connecting to a signal tower near the Alsea Falls recreation site around 9:32 a.m., a remote forested mountainous area far from the city center, with no reasonable explanation for Megan to be there at that time, especially since she claimed to only go to the supermarket or home. The distance from Ellie's house to Alsea Falls is over 40 kilometers, equivalent to about 45 minutes of driving, and the time frame matched unexpectedly with the recovered cell tower data. Megan left the neighborhood earlier than stated, traveled out of the city in a southwesterly direction, and the device appeared in the coverage area of a cell tower near the remote dense forest at a time completely contrary to the schedule she described. To validate this information, the investigation team rechecked the cell map for the Alsea Falls area in 2011 and compared it with the 2022 coverage map. One of the towers serving the forest area had an identifier matching the log from Megan's phone. Although this mountainous forest area is sparsely populated with unstable coverage, the recorded connections were clear enough to determine that Megan's device had appeared in that area. This was the first time in over a decade that the investigation team obtained positioning data showing Megan was present in an area far from Corvallis on the exact morning of Ellie's disappearance, a detail that did not appear in her 2011 statement. When cross-referencing with the actual timeline, Ellie was last seen by a witness around 8 a.m. A door slam was heard at 8:15. Megan's car was seen near Ellie's house from 8:30 to 8:45, and Megan's phone appeared in logs moving southwest shortly afterward. The overall picture began to reveal a profound contradiction between objective data and subjective accounts. Notably, Megan's device only connected to the cell tower at Alsea Falls for about 12 minutes, then switched back to the sequence of towers on the return route to Salem, where she lived at that time. This raised a critical question. Why would someone who said they only visited Ellie's house and then went to a nearby supermarket drive over 40 kilometers to a remote forest stop for only a short time and then return? The cold case unit assessed that this could not be a random trip, especially in the time frame coinciding with Ellie's disappearance, and in the context of Megan being the last person known to have contact with the victim. When incorporating the analysis results into the report, the investigation team clearly noted that Megan's positioning data completely contradicted her previous statements, and the degree of alignment between the travel path and key timestamps related to Ellie was too great to be coincidence. This was the third strong piece of evidence, after the enhanced ATM video and fake emails, proving that Megan had not told the truth about her actions that morning and was present at a location entirely inconsistent with the context of a routine visit. With this discovery, the cold case unit finally had in hand a segment of mobile data with direct forensic value. Megan's device had appeared in the Alsea Falls area on the exact morning of Ellie's disappearance. A detail capable of completely changing the direction of the investigation and forcing police to consider that something serious had occurred in that area on October 11, 2011. After the cell tower data showed Megan Colton's phone appearing in the Alsea Falls area on the morning Ellie Warren disappeared, the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit determined there was sufficient legal basis to obtain a search warrant for Megan's current residence, a small apartment in Salem, where she had lived for many years since leaving Corvallis. The search warrant was approved by the court based on the accumulated chain of digital evidence, the enhanced ATM video showing a high likelihood that the person withdrawing money was Megan, emails sent after Ellie's disappearance, with metadata matching Megan's IP address, and especially the positioning data proving she had gone to a remote area inconsistent with her initial statement. Investigators conducted the search early in the morning when Megan was not home. Her apartment was in an old building, with a narrow entrance and wooden stairs leading to the second floor. Inside, the search team worked according to standard procedure, dividing areas, initial filming, and beginning to check every location likely to contain financial documents or electronic devices. Just minutes later, they discovered a drawer in the bedroom containing a wallet with bank cards. Inside the wallet, besides Megan's personal cards, there was a debit card in Ellie Warren's name. This was a significant sign because, according to family information, Ellie had never authorized anyone to use this card, except for asking Megan to withdraw money in a few specific cases many years earlier. The existence of the card in Megan's home over a decade after Ellie's disappearance indicated that Megan had never returned it and continued to keep it during the subsequent time. Near this location, police also found an envelope containing numerous purchase receipts from stores in Salem, all paid with a credit card opened under Ellie's name. Some receipts were printed from 2013 to 2017, including personal items, cheap household goods, beauty products, and women's clothing, not matching Ellie's style or size. This showed that the transactions had nothing to do with the victim and only directly served the needs of the perpetrator, a typical sign of unauthorized identity use. In another cabinet drawer, investigators discovered an old notebook with table-like notes about withdrawal amounts, payment dates, remaining limits on Ellie's card, along with personal notes like "due pay 50, use e-card for order." These notes were written in different inks, spanning many years and demonstrating a financial management process not for Megan herself, but for an account in Ellie's name. In particular, a few pages showed symbols and arrows linking expenses, indicating Megan closely tracked card usage over a long-term period. This was no longer behavior of borrowing or assisting the victim, but a deliberate, ongoing system of financial exploitation maintained from 2012 to at least 2017. Near the notebook area, police seized another thick envelope containing numerous ATM transaction receipts, mostly printed from ATMs in the Salem area, and a few old ones from Corvallis. Although many receipts had faded ink, the dates were still readable and matched transactions after Ellie's disappearance. All receipts used the same debit card, Ellie's further reinforcing evidence that Megan had continued using the victim's account for years. Besides paper documents, the search team seized a laptop and an external hard drive. Preliminary on-site analysis showed browser history accessing Ellie's email account, even though Ellie had been reported missing long ago. This history included logins in October and November 2011, coinciding with the time fake emails were sent and deleted from the inbox. The laptop also contained documents related to Megan's personal finances, showing prolonged debt, many late payments, and several collection letters, indicating her financial situation was always precarious during Ellie's disappearance, and for many years afterward. From the seized data, the cold case unit built a clearer picture of Megan's behavior. She not only kept Ellie's bank card after the disappearance, but used it continuously, systematically, and concealed it with small tricks like keeping receipts, noting payment schedules, and opening supplementary credit cards under Ellie's name. This behavior lasted at least 6 years, revealing a strong economic motive, one that did not appear in any of Megan's previous statements. Police also noted that the regular basic living expenses were a common pattern in identity theft cases involving missing persons. Instead of withdrawing large amounts to draw attention, the perpetrator spends small regular amounts to avoid bank alerts. Megan's use of this method showed she understood how to avoid creating unusual signs, a characteristic of prolonged calculated behavior. Upon completing the search, investigators determined that the seized evidence not only proved Megan had used Ellie's identity for years, but also showed she had a clear financial purpose in maintaining Ellie's disappearance, as the victim's absence was the condition allowing Megan to continue exploiting the account and identity without detection. This was the first time in the case file that Megan's economic motive was specifically identified with direct evidentiary basis, rather than just indirect suspicion, as in previous years. In late summer 2022, just weeks after the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit conducted the search of Megan Colton's residence and seized a series of financial evidence showing prolonged identity theft, an unexpected event occurred that changed the entire case landscape. The body of Ellie Warren, who had been missing for over 10 years, was finally found in the very area where Megan's cell tower data had been recorded on the morning of October 11, 2011. On an afternoon in late August, two local men hiking at Alsea Falls Recreation Site, a dense forest area in the low range of the Oregon Coast Range, discovered a human skeleton lying more than 50 meters off the main trail, under an area with many fallen trees and thick brush. This was a place rarely visited, especially in late summer, when the dense canopy completely covered the ground. The discoverers initially described it as a skull exposed on a sloped mound of earth, along with a few remnants of old fabric. They immediately notified local police, and the area was sealed off within hours for forensic scene examination. When the Oregon State Police forensic team arrived, they determined this was not a recent body, but a fully decomposed skeleton, with only bones remaining, part of the spine, a few tattered clothing fragments, and some personal items mixed in the decayed soil layer. The first thing that drew attention was the skeleton's location. The area was exactly within the cell tower coverage zone, where Megan's forensic reconstruction data had been recorded on the morning Ellie disappeared. This was no longer a random coincidence, but became a critical link that the cold case unit immediately connected to the entire prior chain of evidence. During evidence collection, the forensic team found several fabric pieces identified as from a dark blue women's jacket, the same type Ellie often wore, according to family statements from 2011. Additionally, a silver necklace with a teardrop pendant was found near the skeleton. Ellie's niece had once described this item as the necklace Ellie always wore and never took off. This physical match strongly reinforced the assumption that the remains belonged to Ellie Warren, but to confirm completely, bone samples were sent to the state DNA lab for detailed analysis. DNA testing took nearly 3 weeks due to decomposition over more than a decade, and the bones requiring multiple processing steps to extract remaining genetic material. However, when results were returned, the lab confirmed the bone sample from Alsea Falls matched DNA with Ellie's niece at 99.98%, sufficient to affirm this was the woman who disappeared in 2011. The notification was sent to Ellie's family, ending over 10 years of not knowing if she was alive or dead. But at the same time, it opened a larger question: what happened in the Alsea Falls forest on the morning Ellie disappeared, and how was she brought there? As forensics examined the skeleton, they noted many bones degraded due to long-term exposure to Oregon's humid forest environment, including rib and arm bones fragmented into small pieces. There were no clear signs of sharp trauma or strong impact force identifiable by visual inspection. No soft tissue remained for toxicological analysis, and no intact clothing to determine if the victim had been dragged, fallen, or subjected to external force before death. Forensic experts concluded that the body had been left outdoors for over 10 years, leading to near-complete decomposition, making assessment of cause of death nearly impossible. However, one notable factor: the skeleton was not far from the tourist trail, but secluded enough that ordinary hikers would rarely notice it. Additionally, the body's position did not coincide with places a person with Ellie's poor health could reach on their own. The terrain was steep and rugged to the point that even healthy people could easily slip if unfamiliar with the path. This led to the hypothesis that Ellie did not voluntarily go to that location. Some items found near the skeleton could provide additional data: a small plastic water bottle that had rotted, a torn paper bag bearing marks from a Corvallis retailer, and part of a jacket zipper. There were no items like a phone, wallet, or keys, consistent with the 2011 home search results, where all of Ellie's important belongings remained intact. This reinforced the assessment that Ellie did not leave home voluntarily and did not bring necessary items for any trip, even a short one. Another forensic factor noted: the body was not in a position indicating burial. Instead, the skeleton lay on the surface, under layers of accumulated decayed leaves over many seasons. This suggested the victim may have been abandoned in the area without significant effort to conceal, an action possibly because the perpetrator believed the dense forest would naturally cover the body over time. Although no direct traces indicated cause of death, the cold case unit assessed that the way the body appeared in the forest, completely isolated from where Ellie was last seen and without necessary items, was consistent with cases where the victim was taken to another location after losing the ability to resist. Therefore, the final forensic report classified Ellie Warren's death as homicide undetermined manner, a case of death with abnormal factors, not due to natural accident, but unable to specify the method or mechanism leading to death due to complete decomposition of the body. Although the legal conclusion could not specify the exact cause of death, the discovery of the remains still became a breakthrough turning point in the investigation. For the first time in over 10 years, police not only had the victim's body, but also identified the death location, and especially, that location matched exactly with the cell tower data that placed Megan Colton in the remote forest on the exact morning Ellie disappeared. Combined with the financial evidence, enhanced ATM video, email access analysis, and financial notes seized from Megan's apartment, the discovery of the body at Alsea Falls transformed a seemingly unsolvable missing person case into one with clear criminal elements, paving the way for a deeper investigation phase to determine Megan's role in Ellie Warren's death. The arrest warrant for Megan Colton was signed in early October 2022, exactly 11 years after the day Ellie Warren disappeared. The Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit had completed a comprehensive report in which the entire chain of evidence accumulated over months of analysis, AI-enhanced ATM video, email metadata matching Megan's IP, cell tower data confirming her presence at Alsea Falls on the morning of Ellie's disappearance, financial notes, Ellie's bank card seized from Megan's home, and finally, the discovery of Ellie's remains at the exact location where Megan's phone had pinged, formed a solid foundation for prosecution. On the morning of Megan's arrest, she had just left her Salem apartment for an early work shift. Policily, she was approached by police, the warrant was read, and she was placed in a patrol car in a state of shock, though observers noted she still tried to maintain composure. Authorities transported her to the Oregon State Police headquarters in Salem, where an interrogation room had been prepared for what was considered the most critical confrontation in the entire case. The interrogation lasted many hours, and the investigation team had planned meticulously to dismantle every piece of Megan's statements from 2011 to the present. After initial procedures, Megan was brought into the interrogation room, where two lead investigators from the cold case unit were present, along with a behavioral analysis expert invited to observe. Megan began the session defensively, declaring that she had nothing to do with Ellie's death and that she was only trying to help a sick woman. However, the investigators did not engage in debate immediately, but started with the point Megan could least deny, the timeline of the morning Ellie disappeared. They placed a printed forensic reconstruction of the cell tower log in front of her. As the investigator read aloud the timestamps, 8:45 a.m., Megan's device leaving Ellie's neighborhood, 9:32 a.m., the device appearing at a tower near Alsea Falls, Megan immediately reacted by repeating her old statement that she only went to the house, then to the supermarket and home. The investigator pointed to the route map and said, "Megan, there is no way you were at Ellie's house and simultaneously appeared at Alsea Falls in under an hour if you only went to the supermarket." We have the original 2011 logs, and the reconstruction process clearly shows your device at the exact location where Ellie's remains were found. Megan's eyes flickered, but she steadfastly denied, "I didn't go there. I swear." That was when the investigator moved to the second part, the ATM video. The screen was turned on, playing the quality-improved footage. Though the face was unclear, the person's build, gait, and standing posture matched Megan's movement pattern almost perfectly. The investigator said, "This is not Ellie in the video. The person in the video stands straight, operates quickly, withdraws money in under 20 seconds. Ellie could not stand like that due to her knee issues, but you could. And AI enhancement shows a gait match between you and the person in the video of over 85%. At this point, Megan looked down at the table, saying nothing. However, the next decisive point was the email's undeniable digital evidence. The investigator showed Megan copies of the metadata, with the IP address from which the emails were sent. This is your home IP in Salem. 2 emails were sent 2 days after Ellie disappeared, from a device logged in with Ellie's password. How do you explain that? Megan immediately countered that someone used my Wi-Fi, but the investigator continued. The metadata also shows Chrome browser on a Windows laptop. We seized your laptop. It has access history matching the exact time the emails were sent. Megan fell silent for much longer. That was the first time she had no response. But the investigators pressed on to the 4th layer, finances. On the table were all the receipts seized from Megan's residence, invoices, notes, handwritten expense tracking tables, along with all bank comparison data. This is your handwriting, correct? Megan looked at the notebook, her lips trembling slightly. The investigator continued. You tracked every transaction. Ellie's debit card was in your home for years. You opened new credit cards in Ellie's name. You made purchases. You made payments. You withdrew money. This is not helping Ellie. This is a systematic, prolonged chain of financial exploitation. Megan still tried to resist. Ellie asked me to. The investigator immediately replied, asked you to when Ellie was no longer alive. When her DNA was found in the Elsa Falls forest, in the same area your device pinged the morning she disappeared. Megan looked up, for the first time showing fear. The silence lasted nearly a minute. That was when the investigator moved to the most critical part. The logic that shattered Megan's entire statement. They read slowly, step by step. Ellie was last seen at 8 a.m., standing on her porch. A door slam at 8:15. Megan's car appeared from 8:30. Megan's phone left the area around 8:45. The device pinged at Elsa Falls at 9:32. ATM transaction at 10:17. Emails sent from Megan's IP on October 12 and 13. And for over 10 years afterward, Ellie's financial transactions occurred in locations where Megan lived. Nearly every timestamp after Ellie was last seen leads back to you, Megan. Not once, not twice, but all of them. Megan began to cry softly, but did not confess. She only repeated, I didn't do anything. I was only helping Ellie. However, the investigators had the final piece ready, the forensic results from Elsa Falls. Ellie could not walk into the forest herself. She could not climb that terrain. No phone, no wallet, no medication. She could only get there by being taken. Megan's eyes wavered more intensely. Panic surfaced, though she still tried to suppress it with repeated denials, but the denials no longer carried weight against the seamless chain of evidence. After nearly 6 hours of interrogation, though Megan still did not directly confess, the cold case unit obtained what they needed: internal contradictions in Megan's new statements, inconsistencies when faced with each type of evidence, and psychological indicators showing she had no reasonable explanation for her presence at Elsa Falls. On the exact morning Ellie disappeared, the interrogation report was completed the same day and forwarded to the prosecutor's office to prepare the indictment. With each layer of evidence stacking up, from the ATM video, fake emails, cell tower, finances, seized bank card, to the discovery of Ellie's remains, the proposed charges included 4 serious counts: murder in the 2nd degree, identity theft, aggravated theft, and abuse of a corpse. Based on digital evidence, physical evidence, and behavior spanning over a decade, the prosecutor's office officially affirmed that Megan had exploited Ellie's dependency, then exploited her disappearance to misappropriate assets, and attempted to cover her actions by creating fake emails and controlling finances after Ellie was no longer alive. The indictment was issued in late October 2022, marking the transition of the 11-year persistent missing person case into a criminal phase with the most serious charges placed on the woman once considered the victim's caregiver. Megan Colton was transferred to Benton County Jail, awaiting trial, officially becoming the sole suspect in the mysterious death of Ellie Warren. The trial of Megan Colton began in early spring 2023 at the Benton County Superior Court. It was one of the most closely watched trials in Oregon in recent years, not only due to its complexity spanning over a decade, but also because of the evidence structure relying almost entirely on forensic reconstruction, a form of digital, behavioral, and telecommunications data analysis rarely used to such depth in a missing person case turned homicide. On the opening day, the prosecutors spent over 2 hours presenting what they called a seamless 11-year logical chain, starting from the morning Ellie Warren disappeared in October 2011, extending through thousands of anomalous financial transactions, forged email logins, mobile device logs, and ending with the discovery of remains at Alsea Falls. The prosecution did not present a specific moment of violence, no direct witnesses, no wounds, no determined cause of death. Instead, they built a multi-layered forensic structure, where each individual piece of data might not be sufficient for conviction alone, but when assembled in sequence, formed a picture as clear as sunlight piercing through the forest canopy. Megan was the only person with motive, opportunity, and prolonged concealment behavior. They began by presenting the timeline of the morning of October 11th. Ellie last seen around 8 a.m. Door slam at 8:15. Megan's car appeared from 8:30 to 8:45. Ellie's phone went completely silent from 7:42 and never reactivated. Then, the prosecution displayed the forensic reconstruction cell tower map, showing Megan's phone leaving Ellie's neighborhood earlier than stated and appearing at Alsea Falls at 9:32. The exact location where Ellie's remains were found. The jury sat in silence as the prosecutor emphasized there is no innocent explanation for Megan's presence at that location on the exact morning Ellie disappeared. Next, the prosecution presented the AI-restored ATM video. Though the face was unidentifiable, the video showed gait, standing posture, and characteristic movement rhythm matching Megan by over 85%. The behavioral analysis expert detailed non-falsifiable movement traits: right shoulder tilt, step distance, ATM operation speed. The prosecution stressed that the person withdrawing money could not be Ellie due to her knee issues and inability to stand straight, making the video indirect but extremely powerful evidence. The third step in the forensic structure was the emails. Metadata showed the 2 emails sent after Ellie's disappearance originated from Megan's home IP, using Chrome on the laptop she owned, logged in with Ellie's exact password. The prosecution projected the entire access log, making rebuttal nearly impossible. If Ellie were alive, the prosecutor said, she would have had to be sitting in Megan's Salem apartment, using Megan's laptop on Megan's network at a time when Megan was home according to cell tower data. That is impossible. Then came the financial section, the clearest physical evidence. From Ellie's bank card seized in Megan's bedroom drawer to hundreds of invoices and ATM receipts spanning 2012 to 2017, all showed Megan systematically using Ellie's identity. The notebook logging every expense, withdrawal date, and credit limit was called by the prosecution a 6-year criminal diary. All of this, combined with Ellie being found without any essential items at death, reinforced the conclusion that she did not leave home voluntarily, but was taken to Alsea Falls. The defense attempted to rebut each part of the forensic structure, but quickly encountered difficulties. Their first argument was that 2011 cell tower data might be inaccurate. However, the prosecution's expert explained in detail that forensic reconstruction relied on multiple intersections from 3 towers, not a single log, with error margins of only a few hundred meters, entirely sufficient to determine movement direction and appearance area. When the defense claimed someone else could have used Megan's Wi-Fi, the prosecution immediately presented email metadata, browser, operating system, device configuration, all matching the seized laptop and no other device. When the defense argued, Megan withdrew money with Ellie's authorization, the prosecution displayed the remains and emphasized Ellie had been in the forest for 11 years. She could not authorize in 2013, 2015, 2017. The defense further claimed undetermined cause of death, but the prosecution countered that Oregon law does not require specifying the method of death when surrounding evidence is strong enough to determine death was not natural. The forensic anthropologist affirmed no signs indicated Ellie reached the body location herself. Terrain, distance, pathology, and lack of phone, wallet, medication completely negated this hypothesis. On the final day of trial, the prosecution concluded with a short but sharp argument. No one may have witnessed the moment Ellie lost her life, but forensics, data, logic, and time all witnessed, and all point to one single place, Megan Colton. The defense presented closing arguments, but clearly could not dismantle the tightly constructed forensic structure. As the jury left for deliberations, the courtroom atmosphere was heavy as lead. After 8 hours of discussion, the jury returned. The four-person stood, voice calm but firm. We find Megan Colton guilty of murder in the second degree. We find the defendant guilty of identity theft. We find the defendant guilty of aggravated theft. We find the defendant guilty of abuse of a corpse. Megan bowed her head, while Ellie's family held hands tightly, tears falling not from pain, but because after 11 years they finally had answers. The judge sentenced life imprisonment with possibility of parole after 35 years. A sentence reflecting not only the murder, but the decade-plus chain of deception, concealment, and identity exploitation. As the gavel fell, the Ellie Warren case officially closed. A seemingly hopeless missing person case was resolved through persistence, new technology, and data connection capabilities far beyond the incident's time frame. And in that moment, after 11 years submerged in silence, the truth was finally returned to the woman who could not protect herself. The story of the Ellie Warren case, a 58-year-old woman who disappeared in Oregon in 2011 and was only found after more than 10 years, is not just a personal tragedy, but also reflects very real issues in modern American society. The isolation of the elderly, the risk of financial exploitation, and the importance of digital data in modern investigations. One of the greatest lessons comes from Ellie, living alone, in poor health, and heavily dependent on Megan Colton, who was later convicted. In the context of an increasing number of elderly Americans living in isolation, this story reminds us that unsupervised dependency on one individual can lead to serious risks. Ellie, allowing Megan access to her bank card and personal information, is similar to many Americans trusting acquaintances, but unchecked trust can open the door to years of abuse, as shown by the chain of spending using Ellie's identity from 2012 to 2018. Additionally, the case clearly demonstrates technology's impact in uncovering truth. Clues, once deemed unusable in 2011, such as blurry ATM video or cell tower logs, became critical evidence thanks to modern processing technology. This reminds us that though many things seem forgotten in the past, digital data does not disappear, and it can bring justice to the vulnerable. Another important lesson is vigilance with personal information. In an era of online banking, email, and digital accounts, the elderly or anyone must ensure passwords, bank cards, and personal devices are not controlled by others. Finally, Ellie's story emphasizes the perseverance of investigative agencies and the community. Justice may come late, but with persistence, technology, and social responsibility, cases thought buried in oblivion can still be resolved, bringing truth and final peace to victims and their families. Thank you for following to the end of this spine-chilling story. If you want to continue joining journeys to uncover truth, like the Ellie Warren case, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any episode. See you in the next video, where we continue exploring mysteries that seemed forever buried but are ultimately revealed by justice and time.